The man was on the ground for 48 hours, but he did not dare to move a single inch, because behind him is a 100-meter-high cliff. The slightest mistake will be broken into pieces. He gripped the ground with his fingers, but the sand was too soft. He couldn't hold on. The whole man slid towards the cliff. His hands didn't work. He had to use his face to increase the friction. Now he could barely stop, but at that moment, the phone in his backpack rang. To answer or not to answer the phone. If it's his wife calling, the consequences of not answering the phone. More serious than falling off a cliff. But if he raises his hand a little, the body will slide down. So he adjusted his position, with his face close to the ground, changed his hand to continue to take. Finally, he reached the phone, but the next second, the man was stuck on the edge of the cliff. Below the cliff, there were sharp rocks. Another 2 hours passed. Both mental and physical exertion had broken him. Suddenly, he began to read the numbers. It turned out that he was calculating the cycle of the waves hitting the rocks. If he could use the seawater to cushion, may be able to save his life. As he read the numbers, the man let go and jumped down. He successfully fell into the sea, but because the sea is too shallow, his body still hit the rocks. The huge impact made him fall into unconsciousness. Fortunately, he came to his senses in time. He tried his best, finally succeeded in surfacing. However, the real test was just beginning. After getting to shore successfully, he carefully checked his body. Except for a cut on his hand, there seemed to be no other problems. But when he stood up, he did not take a step. When he recovered, there was another wound on his head, but that's not the worst of it. Due to hitting his waist when he fell into the water, he had lost the feeling of his legs. Just then, he remembered that he had not returned his wife's call. He quickly retrieved his cell phone from his bag, but the phone has been severely waterlogged. No matter how to press, no response. This is really bad. He could only shout for help, but a normal person who would come to this remote place. In front of him was a steep cliff. Behind him was an endless ocean. Now there was no choice. He had to take off his short sleeves. First, he simply treated the wound. To preserve his strength, the man lay down on the rock and fell asleep. When he opened his eyes again, he calmed down. The sharp pain in his back reminded him he had to do something quickly. He began to look around. It was impossible to climb up the cliff. Fortunately, there was an island in the distance. This was his only hope for survival. He exerted all his strength. A roll successfully down to the sea, but it was not that simple. Due to the loss of sensation in both legs, and one of his hands was badly injured, he could only rely on the other hand to slowly paddle. He didn't have long to swim. His physical strength could not keep up. He had to stop at the surface to rest. Just then, there was a sharp pain in his abdomen. The man directly choked a mouthful of water, then slowly sank to the bottom of the sea. In the moment of death, he thought of his wife again. He was not willing to die like this. The strong desire to live. The man explodes with potential. He swung one hand upstream, finally back to the surface again. But it was impossible to swim to the opposite island. He could only return to the same place.